On January 29th, 1920, Walter Clark was born in New York City to Herbert and Grace Clark. He was the youngest of three children, and by 1930 the family had moved to Fairfield, Connecticut, where William's oldest brother, Herbert Jr., passed away unexpectedly in 1938. In his late teens, Walter met Janet Sherman while attending Pittsfield High School, and on September 23rd, 1941, they were married in Greenwich, Connecticut. The young couple settled in Glenbrook, Connecticut, where Janet found work with Hamblin Wilson and Company, while Walter was employed by the Laminated Shim Company. A little over 9 months later, Janet gave birth to their first child in Stanford Hospital, a boy they named Thomas Benton Clark. Together they lived happily in Glenbrook, and since William was a father, he was exempt from being drafted once America entered the Second World War on December 7th. But despite this good fortune, something compelled Walter to enlist in the Army on July 6th, 1944. Monday, September 25th, 1944. Darling, got a swell letter from you today with the picture of Tom and Roger. Gee, it's cute. Reminds me of the nice early summer, and the nights I'd come home and you'd tell me about all the funny little things that the funny little kids did each day. I hope they're both still as cute as I remember them, and that Tom and Dan don't take too many rounds out of them. How does Ricky get along in the gang? Thanks for sending it anyway. It's awful cute. Got a hot tip today that we will be moving out of here November 5th, the day after we are finished training. Normally they hang around here for another week after we get back from the bivouac at Morrisville, which lasts 18 days and is the climax of our training. Sure hope this is good dope. I'm going to try to get next to Hector Dowdy at Maxwell Field and see if he can get me flown home when the time comes. I'm glad you say you are making out financially. I hope you really are. I'm broke as hell, but fine otherwise and feeling better every day. The weather is cooler now and we don't waste so much energy sweating, although the sun can still fry you when it comes out real strong. There'll be a full moon in a few nights, and I'll be thinking of how lovely it looks up home, and of you sitting by the window and thinking back to the quiet, happy nights when we didn't know how lucky we were. But don't worry, darling. We'll see hundreds more of these beautiful nights together, and if I never knew before, I'll know how to appreciate them now. As to my going overseas, I can only speculate. There are several possibilities after we finish basic. We may go right to a port of embarkation and go over as replacements in fighting outfits. Or we may go to another camp and become part of some new division which may be forming. Or some of us may stay here as permanent personnel to help train new men. There are also other possibilities. Anything is possible in the Army. I'm inclined to think, however, that we'll get more training either in the States or abroad before we get near any front. One thing is sure unless I am stationed here permanently, and that is that I'll have a furlough when we get through basic. Another sure thing is that I will be riding in jeeps, as all machine gun and mortar crews ride with their weapons right up close to the front. We will also use a 3/4-ton truck, which is just as versatile as a jeep, but bigger and more rugged. So you can tell Tom that pretty soon his daddy will be riding in style. Unfortunately, we will have to walk through the most part of our basic, however. Darling, I want you to know how much I think about you, and how much I love you. I've been true and intend to remain so, and I'm happy if you feel that you want to also. There is so much for me to come back to, that the thought of any fleeting pleasures I might stumble on doesn't even interest me, because I am so wrapped up in you and Tom that nothing else even shows up in the picture. I want to come back to you with a clean mind and body, and I want you to feel then that I've done my best in all respects. And I know you won't have that feeling unless I do too. We have a few men here who have come back from overseas, and they are fine men. If all come back like them, we will have a wonderful nation afterwards. They are fair, and they're quiet, and there's no baloney about them at all. Anyway, whatever I turn out to be, you will know that I always have you, and hope you'll never be sorry that I do. I am proud of you. You've been a good wife and a splendid mother, and I know you always will be, as long as I deserve all that you keep for me. Love, Walter. Turned out that one of Walter's possibilities actually came to pass. After a bit more training, he left for France as a replacement on board the USS Wakefield, a troop transport which had been a cruise liner before the war. During the 3-day voyage, news broke that the Battle of the Bulge had begun, and the Germans were breaking out into the Ardennes. This was grim news for the men on board, and many of them would soon be thrown into the freezing cold Ardennes forest as replacements, including Walter. Although Walter told Janet what he could, censorship kept much of his activities a secret. Even when Walter was wounded in action, the exact details of what had happened were kept from her. But thankfully, Walter's injuries were treatable, and he was recovering at a convalescent camp in Coventry, England, when he wrote this letter to Janet. Saturday, March 17th, 1945. Darling, this has been quite a day for me as days go around here. I am mailing you a small package containing the Purple Heart Medal. The experience of receiving it was more nerve-wracking than that of earning it. After spending half the day on KP amongst the never-ending parade of terribly greasy, sloppy pots and pans, I was suddenly hailed to the orderly room and informed that I had 9 minutes to get ready to appear in a different parade, at which 3 other fellows and myself were to be presented with medals. I was floored at the prospect of having to make myself look and feel like a human being in 9 minutes, as there is something subhuman about a KP after he has been wallowing in dishwater for 4 or 5 hours. Besides this impossibility was the prospect of having to stand up in front of 1,000 or so GIs and go through a lot of unfamiliar mumbo-jumbo, with a colonel bearing down on the whole procedure. Well, there was nothing for it but to proceed as ordered and make the best of it. After a hurried rehearsal, with a lieutenant and a first sergeant to teach us our little routine, they all the while knowing that we would probably forget all our cues and lines, the parade got under its cumbersome way, and at the appointed time our little foursome stepped bravely out onto the field of honor. All went surprisingly well until we were face to face with the colonel himself, when to our speechless dismay, we discovered that we'd been betrayed. We were remembering our parts fairly well, but the colonel, he hadn't been rehearsed by the same mentors as we had, and he stood too close to us and called the names in the wrong order. This led to much awkward shuffling and facing and marching as we stepped forward to be rewarded. I must say here that the colonel was more than decent. He overlooked many things for which we might have been practically court-martialed in another formation. Unsoldierly motions of the foot, odd-looking salutes, stammering acknowledgment of his kindly bestowed conversations, which I'm sure was meant to put us at ease. In the course of this part of the ceremony, he discovered that I was from Greenwich, where he said he had some patients. At this point I decided he was from New York City, and practically a neighbor, and I guess I must have felt a certain fellowship with him. This was a big mistake. It led to one of the most excruciating moments of my career in the military, which seems to have been all one big mistake to begin with. Well, we had it, as the saying goes, and we marched one by one onto the reviewing stand to watch the parade pass, our part now being played out. This was in the nature of a treat for me, for although I've marched in many parades, in the last few months about all I've been able to see was the napes of many close-shorn necks bobbing up and down in front of me. I was further pleased when, after the review, I Company was judged the best in the parade, I being one of the judges affirming the choice. After it was all over, the colonel and some of the other brass started to chat with us. Now, mind you, I had already established a feeling of communion with the colonel, and when he said he had a patient named Clark in Old Greenwich, the feeling became stronger. But when he said there was nothing wrong with him but Seagram's whiskey, it flashed through my mind that here was one of the many New York doctors who had treated Pappy. I beamed, stuttered, stepped forward, and as I write this I'm squirming in my skin, and all the while grinning like the proverbial cat. I did all this, and saying, "That must have been my father," out of the feeling of fellowship and the excitement of the apparent coincidence, I tapped him on the chest. Now, if you know of many privates who have gone up and tapped their colonel on the chest, it will probably help me to stop squirming. I'm afraid they're all too few, and I must squirm alone always, as I started to do about 2 seconds after my little gesture of friendly familiarity. I don't know how many regulations I broke, but if you suddenly came to and found yourself painting your toenails at a banquet, you'd probably get the same feeling. That was the end for me. As I said before, the old boy was really swell about everything. He just looked for a second as though he'd been hit by 10,000 volts of electricity. But he went on chatting and never really even made a sign of disapproval. It turns out that his patient Clark was a whiskey salesman, not a consumer, and was suffering from a sore arm, not dipsomania. This didn't matter at all. Even if he had delivered me at birth, I don't think I could ever even say sir to him again, without shriveling up to pen size after my fox paws. Tres tres. That was a long story in the telling, and if it's not interesting, at least it's embarrassing. Don't think I'm suffering from undue inferiority complex, but there are some things you just don't do. I finally got some of your early letters today. One was written December 8th, the night we last spoke to each other. It is a beautiful letter, and I shall keep it and read it often. There are 3 others from late in January, and the Valentine from Tom, which says, "I love you, dear Dad, Tom." It's beautiful, too. Anyone who can have as much love as I got in those 2 envelopes surely has much to be thankful for, and much to come home to. With all my love to you on this last page, it's the only important one. The others were just to let me talk to you for a while. Walt. Censorship only allowed Walter to talk about receiving the Purple Heart. But it wouldn't be until days after the war in Europe ended, on May 8, 1945, that Walter was finally able to tell his wife everything that had happened in the months since he left home, and how he earned his Purple Heart. France, May 13th, 1945. Darling, it says in the Stars and Stripes that censorship is being relaxed quite a bit. So I can tell you a few things that have been secret up to now, and in which you may be interested. I'll start from the beginning. We sailed from Boston and had a fairly quick trip to England, dodging a few subs that the radar picked up and running into some rather rough weather. I've never seen so many seasick people. Personally, I enjoyed the trip and wasn't sick at all, only homesick. We went through England in a few hours, across the channel and onto a train of boxcars, the famous 40 and 8s, which means 40 men or 8 horses, and started across France on Christmas Eve. It was terribly cold on that train. The guys would jump off every time it stopped and scrounge stoves out of the wrecked houses along the way, and a few lumps of coal, and we'd have heat until the next stop, when the major would make us throw the stoves off, for fear the cars would catch fire. So we froze all that night. The next day, Christmas, was beautiful, and we felt good because our bombers were going over all day. We'd been hearing all about the big breakthrough, and we figured the Air Force would be a big help in stopping it. That day we went through the famous battlegrounds of World War I, and its scars were everywhere, along with the newer and worse ones of this war. There wasn't a single sign of Christmas anywhere, and the people we saw were miserable, as were we. But it made you feel good to know that our own folks at home were not suffering, and I felt right then that I'd come over here any time if it would help keep the war away from the U.S. We had a can of sea rations for Christmas dinner, and rattled on into the night. Next morning the inside of the car looked like the inside of your Frigidaire. All the metal parts were covered with frost. Late that day we got off at a place called Neufchâteau, near Nancy, and stayed overnight in some stables, then spent another night on the 40 and 8s on the way to Metz, where we waited a day or so. That's where I lost all my buddies. We were assigned to different divisions, and I never saw any of them after I left. As you may have figured from the APO number, I went to the 26th Division, which was originally a Massachusetts National Guard outfit, and in the 3rd Army with your beloved General Patton. In Metz we got on trucks for the last lap up to the south flank of the Bulge. I managed to fall asleep on the truck, and was rudely awakened when we stopped by a 240mm gun, which shook the earth and lit up the sky. This was New Year's Eve. We stayed in the hayloft that night, and that damn gun rocked us to sleep. We started the new year right by going up into the lines to join our company, and receive shell fire for the first time. This was in northern Luxembourg, near Wiltz, which we were trying to take, and about 7 miles east of Bastogne. They shot everything at us, but for 4 days nobody got hurt in our company. Then at 3 a.m. on January 5th, I climbed out of my hole to go on guard, yawned, stretched, and shivered. And then whee! I was wrapped around a tree, trying to figure out where my right leg was. It was where it should have been, only a little numb, but I kicked it with my other foot and was reassured when I felt how solid it was. 6 other guys were hit by the same shell. They got a jeep up and took some of us back to the aid station. And 9 hours later I was in an evacuation hospital in Esch, Luxembourg. I think I wrote you from there, but I was doped up most of the time. Thence to Paris via hospital train, and a few days later back to England to a hospital near Liverpool on January 16th. About March 1st, I moved to a convalescent center near Coventry, in the heart of England. That town was about the worst hit in England in the Blitz, and is in pretty bad shape still. I'm now in a depot near Thionville, right near the Luxembourg and German borders. If I go into Germany, I won't be able to tell you exactly where I am, as the censorship forbids. I hope I haven't given away any trade secrets in this letter, but it's probably too long anyway. They announced the point system for demobilizations yesterday, and I have only 37 out of the required 85, so have a long way to go. However, according to the paper, prospects of getting home for a while in the next few months are fairly good. I've had a feeling for some time that I would see you soon, and summer is always a lucky time for us, you know, darling. Gee, it's such a wonderful feeling to be able to walk around over here and not worry about air raids and shell fire, and to know that the ETO is now a zone of the interior. It's sinking in now. The damned war went on for so long that it's funny to think it's over. I hope this letter hasn't bored you. I'll tell you a lot more when I get home if you're interested. For now, goodbye, and all my love. Walt. The war in Europe was finally over, and the only thing Walter wanted was to return home to his family. But this wouldn't be so easy. With only 37 points, he faced a long wait before his turn would finally come. And in next week's episode, we'll dig deeper into his thoughts on post-war Germany and the dull routine of occupation duty. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing. And until next week, this is your friendly neighborhood narrator, signing off.